Record. So here guys, good evening. Gonna be recording a land title and deeds. Gonna do a question and answer. This is for my preparation for my midterm and final exam on the property law. So here it goes. So land title and deed. What is a regalian doctrine? Based on Section 2, Article 7, Article 12 of the 987 Philippine Constitution, all lands of the public domain belongs to the state, and the state is the source of any asserted right to ownership in land and charged with the conservation of such patrimony. Thus, all lands not otherwise appearing to be clearly within private ownership are presumed to be belong to the state. Accordingly, public lands not shown to have been reclassified or released as alienable agricultural land or alienated to a private person by the state remain part of the inalienable public domain. So, is there an exception to the Regalian Doctrine? Of course, yes. The only exception to the Regalian Doctrine is the native title to land or ownership of the land by Filipinos by virtue of a claim of ownership since time immemorial. And independent of any grant from Spanish crown, claims of private ownership pursuant to native title are presumed to have been held even before the Spanish conquest. Thus, lands of subject of native titles are deemed excluded from mass of lands forming part of the public domain, that is the now CADS T. So how are properties of the public domain classified under 1987 Constitution? Section 3, Article 12 of the 1987 Constitution classifies lands of public domain into five categories: agricultural lands, forest lands, timber lands, mineral lands, and national parks. Take note, only the agricultural lands can be deemed can be declared alienable and disposable by the president. Now, can all lands be public domain be alienated and disposed of the state? No. Of course, again, only lands classified as agricultural may be declared alienable and susceptible of private ownership. It must be noted that private ownership contemplates not only ownership by private persons, but also ownership by the state, provinces, cities, and municipalities in their private capacity. How are properties of the state classified under Civil Code? Article 419 of the Civil Code classifies property of the state into two categories: public domain or public dominion and the private ownership. Property of public dominion is beyond the commerce of man and not susceptible of private appropriation and acquisitive prescription. Occupation thereof is in the concept of owner, no matter how long, cannot ripen into ownership and be registered as a title. On the other hand, property of private ownership, besides the patrimonial property of the state, provinces, cities, municipalities, consist of all property belonging to private persons, either individually or collectively. So how are properties of public dominion further classified? Lands that are public dominion are further classified between those intended for public use or for public service, which are held by the state in its public capacity, and the patrimonial property, which are held by the state in its private capacity. So, in short, they are owned privately by the state. So, what are the examples of public dominion? So, Article 420 of the Civil Code provides following properties of public dominion: those intended for public use, such as roads, canals, rivers, torrents, ports, bridges, constructed by the state, banks, shores, roadsteads, and other similar character. Those which belong to the state without being for public use are intended for some public service or for development of the national wealth. In addition to the above, the Presidential Decree 1067 or the Water Code of the Philippines dated 13/1976 enumerates the following: rivers and their natural beds, continuous or intermittent waters of springs and brooks running into their natural beds and beds themselves, natural lakes and lagoons, all other categories of surface waters such as water flowing over the land, water from rainfall, whether natural or artificial, and water from agriculture, runoff, seepage and drainage, atmospheric water, finally subterranean or groundwaters. So additionally, there's sea waters, continuous or intermittent waters rising from such land, lakes, lagoons, naturally occurring on such lands, rainwater falling on such lands, subterranean or groundwaters, and waters in the swamp and marshes. What are the patrimonial properties of the state? So, a patrimonial property refers to property that is open to disposition by the government or otherwise property pertaining to the national domain or public lands. Article 421 of the Civil Code provides that all other property of the state which are not of the character mentioned in Article 420 of the same code or those are uh, properties of public dominion is a patrimonial property. Property of public dominion when no longer needed for public use or for public service shall form part of the patrimonial property of the state. So who has the burden of proof in overcoming the presumption of state ownership? So answer is the burden of proof overcoming the presumption of state ownership of the lands of the public domain is on the person applying for registration or claiming ownership, who must prove that the land subject of application is alienable or disposable. To overcome this presumption, incontrovertible evidence must be established and the land subject of the application or claim is alienable or disposable. So, who are qualified to acquire and hold the land for public domain? Section 3, Articles 12 of the 1987 Constitution provides that only Filipino citizens may acquire lands of the public domain. So can a private corporation acquire lands of the public domain? Of course, no. Section 3, Article 12 of the 1987 Constitution provides that private corporations or associations may not hold such alienable lands of the public domain except by lease for a period not exceeding 25 years, renewable or not more than 25 years, and not exceeding 1,000 hectares in area. So example, HCCDI, a domestic corporation, applied for land registration of lot number 3246, claiming that it had continuous adverse public and uninterrupted possession in the concept of an owner since 1976. So take note of that. That is OSENPO, open, continuous, exclusive possession in the concept of owner under the bona fide claim of ownership. So by virtue of deed of assignment executed by their heirs of Siriaco, Chonaco, or the heirs of Chonaco, who possess the same in the concept of an owner since 1945 or earlier. Both the trial court and the Court of Appeals ruled that the land was within the alienable and disposable lands of the public domain. Is HCCDI entitled to own the subject lot? Like I said, no. HCCDI as a corporation cannot apply for registration of land of the public domain. The 1987 Philippine Constitution prohibits private corporation from acquiring any kind of alienable land of the public domain. So who are qualified to acquire private lands? On the basis of their capacity to acquire or hold lands of the public domain, the following may acquire private lands. So number one, the Philippine citizens. Number two, Filipino corporations and association, at least 60% of the capital of which is owned by the Filipinos. So that is the Filipino First Doctrine. Aliens, but only by hereditary succession. And lastly, the natural born citizens who have lost their Philippine citizenship subject to limitations prescribed by law. But first, of course, they must have acquired the property when they were still Filipino citizens. So question, can a foreigner acquire or own a land in the Philippines? The answer is, as a general rule, foreigners are prohibited from acquiring lands in the Philippines, including ownership in trust. By way of exception, they can do so only by way of hereditary succession. So if they have succeeded the land property. Now, what is the extent of constitutional ban on land ownership against foreigners? The answer is the constitutional ban against the foreigners applies only to ownership of the Philippine land, not to the improvements built thereon. Moreover, foreigners are not completely excluded by the Constitution from the use of lands for residential purposes, since their residence in the Philippines is temporary. They may be granted temporary rights such as lease contract, which is not forbidden by the Constitution. Now, when is an invalid transfer to an alien cured? So if an land is invalidly transferred to an alien who subsequently becomes a Filipino citizen or transfer it to a Filipino citizen, the flaw in the original transaction is considered cured and the title of the transferee is rendered valid. So what are the limitations on land ownership with respect to natural-born citizens who have lost their Philippine citizenship? I mentioned before, Section 10, Republic Act 7042 provides the following limitations. He or she may be transferee of the private land up to the maximum area of 5,000 square meters in the case of urban land and or 3 hectares in the case of rural land to be used by him for business or other purposes. He or she may acquire not more than 2 lots, which should be situated in different municipalities or cities anywhere in the Philippines, provided that the total land area thereof shall not exceed area limitation I mentioned above. That will be 5,000 square meters in urban and 3 hectares in rural. If he or she is a transferee who has already acquired urban land, he or she shall be disqualified from acquiring rural land and vice versa. So when you have land in the cities, you cannot own land in the province. Now, when is the capacity to acquire land determined? A capacity to acquire land is determined at the time its acquisition, not registration. In 1972, Luciano de la Cruz sold to Chua Chung Chun, a Chinese citizen, a parcel of land in Binondo. So Chua died in 1990, leaving behind his wife and 3 children, on one of whom is Julian, who is a natural Filipino citizen. 6 years after Chua's death, the heirs executed an extrajudicial settlement of the state, and the parcel of the land was allocated to Julian. In 2007, Luciano filed a suit to recover the land he sold to Chua, alleging that the sale was void because it contravened the Constitution, which prohibits the sale of private lands to aliens. Julian moved to dismiss the suit on the grounds that pari delicto, laches, and acquisitive prescription. So this pari delictos, who seek equity must come with clean hands, or the clean hands doctrine. So the answer is the case must be dismissed. The Supreme Court has held that if land was invalidly transferred to an alien who subsequently becomes a citizen or transfer it to a citizen, the flaw in the original transaction is considered cured, and the title of the transferee is rendered valid. In this case, the parcel of land was invalidly transferred to Chua, an alien, but he subsequently transferred the same to his son, Julian, a naturalized Filipino citizen. Hence, the defect in Chua's ownership was cured, and there is no more violation of the Constitution because the parcel of land is now owned by a Filipino citizen. So let's go now to registry of the property. So question, what is the purpose of registry of the property or registry of deeds? The registry of the property has for its object the inscription or annotation of acts, contracts relating to the ownership and other rights over immovable property. So again, another purpose of this in the case of uh, one of case in jurisprudence that the purpose of this is to quiet title. So can titles not inscribed or annotated in the registry of property bind third person? So the general rule is no. The titles of ownership or of other rights of over immovable property which are not duly inscribed or annotated in the registry of property shall not prejudice third person. So, yeah. Question A, can a person conduct his own title verification in the registry of deeds? So, of course, yes, the books in the registry of property shall be public for those who have known interest in ascertaining the status of the immovals of real rights annotated in or inscribed therein. So what are the laws govern the determination of title subject to inscription or annotation? For determining the titles are subject or to inscriptions or annotations, as well as the form, defects, and cancellation of the inscriptions and annotations, the manner keeping the books of registry, and the value of the entries contained in the said books, the provisions of the Mortgage Law, the Land Registration Act, and other special laws shall govern. So let's go the torrent system. So the certificate of title. So what is torrent system of registration? The torrent system mandates that the government should issue an official certificate of title that attests to the fact that the person named in the owner is the owner of the property described therein, subject to such liens and encumbrances as thereon noted or what the law warrants or reserves. What is the purpose of torrent system registration? So the purpose of the adopting the torrent system is in our jurisdiction is to guarantee the integrity of land titles and to protect their indivisibility once the claim of ownership is established and recognized. This is to avoid any possible conflict of title that may arise by giving the public the right to rely upon the face of the torrent's title and dispense with the need of inquiring further as to ownership of the property. So that is the mirror doctrine. Does the registration under torrent system vest ownership? Of course, general rule, no. Registration is not a mode of acquiring ownership. It is only means of confirming the fact of its existence and notice to the world at large. Certificates of title are not a source of right. The mere possession of a title does not make one true owner of the property. Again, the true purpose of the torrent system or registration is to quiet title. Imagine if people are not secured in their property. So, example, the Republic executed a deed of sale in favor of Novi involving a parcel of land situated inside the former Fort Bonifacio military reservation in Taguig. A transfer certificate of title was subsequently registered in favor of Novi. Later on, the Republic sought to nullify the sale on the ground that the property was still part of the military reservation and thus inalienable. land of the public domain. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Republic and held that the property remains a part of public domain that could not have been validly disposed of in favor of novi. So what is the effect of the void sale of title issued to novi? So simply said, since the sale of the property is void, the title issued to novi is similarly void ab initio or void at the inception. It is well settled doctrine that the registration under the torrent system does not, by itself, best title as it is not a mode of acquiring ownership. It merely confirms the registrar's already existing title. Okay. So what is the effect of the torrent system? Again, registration in the registry of deeds serves as a constructive notice to the whole world as provided by Section 52 Presidential Decree 1529, every conveyance, mortgage, lease, lien, attachment, order, judgment, instrument, or entry affecting registered land shall, if registered, filed or entered in the office of the Registrar of Deeds for the province or city where the land to which it relates lies, be constructive notice to all person from the time of such registering, filing, or entering. So the in short meaning of this is once you registered the property in the registry of deed, it serve as constructive notice to the whole world. That's the operative act, the registration that will bind the third person. So no need to there's no need to inform each and every one of the people that you own this land. Once you register, it is implied that the people should know because it's public knowledge. It's open for the public. So question, can Spanish titles be used as evidence of ownership? So again, no. Spanish titles can no longer be used as evidence of land ownership in registration proceedings under the Tunan system. Because yes, we are independent now. We have our own government. That's why the Spanish titles do not bind. So what is the distinction between title and certificate of title? So title is generally defined as the lawful cause or ground of possessing which is ours. It is that which is foundation of ownership of property, real or personal. Title, therefore, may be defined briefly as that which constitute or a just cause of exclusive possession or which in the foundation of ownership or property. Certificate of title, on the other hand, is a mere evidence of ownership. It is not the title or that land itself. Under the Torrent system, a certificate of title may be an original certificate of title, which constitutes the true copy of the decree of registration. So OCT is it's the bringing of the property within the Torrent system or in the Torrent system. And number two, the transfer certificate of title issued subsequent to the original registration. So what is the process in preparing the decree of registration and certificate of title? So after the judgment directing the registration of title to land has become final, the court shall, within 15 days from entry of judgment, issue an order directing the Land Registration Authority, LRA, to issue the corresponding decree of registration and certificate of title. Then the clerk of court shall send within 15 days from entry of judgment certified copies of the judgment and of the order of the court directing the commissioner to issue the corresponding decree of registration and certificate of title, and a certificate stating that the decision has not been amended, reconsidered, nor appealed, and has become final. Then thereupon the commissioner shall cause to be prepared the decree of registration as well as the original and duplicate of the corresponding original certificate of title. The original certificate of title shall be a true copy of the decree of registration. The decree of registration shall be signed by the commissioner, entered and filed in the Land Registration Commission. The original of the original certificate of title shall also be signed together with the owner's duplicate certificate of title to the registry of deeds of the city or province where the property is situated for entry in his registration book. So what is the principle of indivisibility of Torres title? So under the principle of indivisibility of Torres title enshrined in section 32 PD 1529, title to the property covered by a Torrens title or Torrens certificate becomes indivisible after the expiration of the 1 year from entry of the decree of registration. Such decree of registration is incontrovertible and becomes binding on all persons whether or not they were notified or participated in that interim registration process. So what is the probative value of certificate of title? A certificate of title registered under the Torrent system serves as proof of an incontrovertible title over the property in favor of the individual whose name appears on the title. So I remember the case, Ligarda versus Salibi. The Supreme Court ruled there that the purpose of the torrent system is to quiet title. So does the principle of indivisibility of title prevail over allegation of fraud? So no, of course no. Again, the allegation of fraud must be averred or alleged with specificity or particularity. So again, no if the judgment from which the certificate of title springs is null and void, the title can never be indivisible as its issuance was replete with badges of fraud and irregularities that rendered the same nugatory. Again, uh, nothing comes out from void. Okay. That is the basic tenet. Okay? Garbage in, garbage out. So we settle in the rule that the indivisibility of a title does not attach to titles secured by fraud and misrepresentation. The perfect example of this is the Manlese versus Ferreras case. In view of these circumstances, it was as if no title at all was ever issued, and therefore this is hardly occasion to talk to collateral attack against the title. So what is the rule in seeking to nullify a certificate of title? A certificate of title is not subject to collateral attack. It cannot be altered or cancelled except in a direct proceedings in accordance with law. So what is the difference between a direct attack and collateral attack? The attack is direct when the object of the action is to annul or set aside such judgment or enjoin its enforcement. On the other hand, the attack is indirect or collateral when, in action to obtain a different relief, an attack on judgment is nevertheless made as as an incident thereof. So we can never question the title or the ownership unless you directly challenge it, file it for nullity or yeah, nullity of title court. So may a direct attack on the certificate of title be in a counterclaim? Of course. Again, a counterclaim is same as a uh, original case. it depends now if it's compulsory or uh discretionary counterclaim. Whereas a direct attack on the certificate of title may be in an original action or in a counterclaim. A counterclaim is considered a new suit in which the defendant becomes the plaintiff in respect of the counterclaim. May a direct attack on the certificate of title be in third-party complaint against? Yes. In action revindicatory case, the Supreme Court reiterated that if the object of the third-party complaint is to nullify the title of the third-party defendant, the third-party complaint constitutes a direct attack on a title because the same is in the nature of original complaint for cancellation of title. The situation can be likened to a case of recovery of possession wherein the defendant files a counterclaim against the plaintiff attacking the validity of the debtor's title. Like a third-party complaint, a counterclaim is considered an original complaint and such. The attack to the title cannot be considered as a collateral attack. So, example, plaintiffs filed a complaint against the defendant for quieting of title in damages. They alleged that upon their return from the United States, they found that the subject property was occupied and cultivated by the tenants of the defendant who could not produce any document evidencing the defendant's ownership. In his answer, the defendant averred by way of affirmative defense that the lots in questions were portions of a parcel of land owned by one Calixto Gabud, which were eventually sold to him through a series of intermediary transfers. The defendant interposed a counterclaim that Gregorio Buntuyan, the plaintiff's predecessor, obtained his title to the property through fraud. Defendant prayed that the complaint be dismissed, that he be declared the owner of the property, and the title of Bantuyan be cancelled. Plaintiffs countered that the defendant's counterclaim constituted a collateral attack on the title of Buntuyan, and the titles emanating therefrom are middle paragraph. So the question is, are the plaintiffs correct? Course, no. An action is a direct attack on a title if its object is to nullify the same and thus challenge the proceedings pursuant to which the title was issued. A direct attack on a title may be an original action or in counterclaim assailing it as void. A counterclaim is considered a new suit again and is to be tested by the same rules as if it were an independent action. Since defendant counterclaim alleges that the plaintiff's predecessor obtained the title through fraud, such counterclaim is considered a direct attack on the title. So let's cite some few cases on this that there was a direct attack on certificate of title. So first, the heirs of Sumagang versus Asnar. It was held by the Supreme Court that the cross claim is a direct attack and the on the certificate of title. In Sarmiento versus CA, it was held by the Supreme Court that the third-party complaint seeking nullification of the certificate of title is considered as an direct attack. Number three, in Pilipinas, Eslon Manufacturing Corporation versus Heirs of Lianes, it was held by the Supreme Court that the action to quiet title is a direct attack and not a prescribed collateral attack on a certificate of title if its primary purpose is to nullify a certificate of title. Similarly, in Bernas versus State of Yuhan Hat, Yat, it was held that the action filed by Yuhan Yat was not a collateral attack just because it was denominated as a petition for quieting of title instead of petition for annulment of title. Again, it's not the title of the petition that governs or uh, controls. It is what is the content of the petition. Meow, meow. So if there's a cases for direct attack, Now let's cite cases about the collateral attack. In Ersin Collado versus Gutierrez, it was held that in Action Provinciana case, affirmative defense that the plaintiff's OCT was obtained by fraud and acquisitive prescription constitute a collateral attack on the OCT. Hence, the RTC is without jurisdiction to order conveyance to the defendants and effectively nullify the OCT. In Tuason versus Isagon, it was held that in an unlawful detainer suit, the defense that the plaintiff's certificate of the title was fraudulently obtained constitutes a collateral attack on the title and should not therefore be entertained to directly assail the validity of the TCT. A direct action for a conveyance must be filed. Lastly, in the case of Wee versus Mardo, it was held that an application for original registration of an already titled land constitute a collateral attack on the existing title. So, question, does a provisional determination of ownership constitute an attack on a title? So, a provisional determination of ownership, whether made in an ejectment or provisional proceeding, does not oppose a real attack on the Torrens title in dispute since courts do not possess the jurisdiction to order such the alteration, modification, or cancellation of Torrens titles in such cases. So, example, Mr. and Mrs. Roman and Mr. and Mrs. Cruz filed an application for registration of a parcel of land which, after due proceedings, was granted by the RTC, acting as a land registration court. However, before the decree of registration could be issued, the spouses Roman and the spouses Cruz sold the lot to Juan in notarized deed of sale. The sellers expressly undertook us to submit the deed of sale to the land registration court so that the title to be property B would be directly issued in Juan's name. Is such stipulation valid? Of course, yes, the stipulation is valid. Section 22 of PD 1529 expressly provide that after filing of the application for registration and before the issuance of decree of registration, the land may still be subject of dealings in whole or in part upon presentment of pertinent instruments of the court. The court, after notice to the party, shall order that the decree of the registration be issued in the name of the person to whom the property has been conveyed by said instruments. So let's distinguish direct attack from collateral attack on a title. So again, a direct attack is action to annul the title itself. On the other hand, collateral attack is an action that incidentally questions the validity of title of the transfer of certificate title when seeking a different relief. So, if the title is issued in the name of the original sellers, would motion filed by Juan in the same case to correct or amend the title in order to reflect his name of as an owner considered a collateral attack? Of course, no. It cannot be considered a collateral attack. A collateral attack exists when attack on an incidental matter is made on the judgment of an action to obtain a different relief. In this case, the motion to correct or amend the title order to reflect one's name does not attack the judgment directing the issuance of the title in the names of the sellers. Instead, one's motion admits, albeit impliedly, the validity of title of the sellers or the seller's predecessor in interest. So another example, the petitioner Garcia in 1979 purchased from Matute a parcel of land in Davao Oriental through a deed of sale. He divided the land and donated portions of it to his children and grandchildren through deeds of transfer of rights. Petitioners then filed with the DNR application for the issuance of land titles. The petitioners were issued their respective patents and thereafter certificate of titles upon registration. Respondents who are holder of the certificates of land ownership award issued by the DOR or Department of Agrarian Reform filed a petition for annulment and declaration of nullity of deed of sale and all the deeds documents and proceeding relying thereon before the office of the provincial adjudicator or the DARAB. Respondents alleged that the 1979 deed of sale was void for not being promptly registered before the Registry of Deeds in violation of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Act. The provincial adjudicator dismissed respondents' petition for lack of jurisdiction and held that the validity of title cannot be attacked collaterally. However, the DARAB reversed this decision and declared that the certificate of title void. The CAA affirmed the ruling of DARAB. So the issue is, did the CA commit grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction in affirming the nullity of the certificate of title? So the answer is in section 43, PD 1529 states that the certificate of title shall not be subject to collateral attack and cannot be altered, modified, or cancelled except in a direct proceedings in accordance with law. Here, it is important to note that the petitioners are holders of certificate of title registered under the Torrent system. Thus, their certificates can only be attacked directly, yet respondents instituted a collateral attack in their petition before the provincial adjudicator. The provincial adjudicator properly dismissed the petition. However, on appeal, the DARAB reversed the provincial adjudicator and held that there was no direct attack. By giving due course to the appeal, therefore allowing prohibited a collateral attack, the DARAB gravely abuses its discretion. Again, petitioner's certificate of title being registered in the torrent system can only be attacked in action expressly instituted for that purpose. It cannot be assailed even incidentally in an action mainly seeking a different relief, such as respondent's petition to nullify the deed of sale. But aside from allowing a collateral attack, the DARAB also went further and effectively declared the certificates void based on said collateral attack. Clearly, then the CA is not justified in dismissing petitioner's certiorari petition that questioned the DARAB's patently void decision. For doing so, the CA itself committed grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction, rendering the sale decision nullity as well. So let's stop here. We're gonna continue again next.